this is another sister of mine. I was in the car with her, and we're up in Denver, and she's like, oh, I need to get gas. And then we pull into the station, and she's like, hey, would you be willing to pump it? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can, but what's up with that? And she said, well, I only know how to use the gas station near my house.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you bust out laughing?
Well, I did, but then I realized she was serious, that she was very terrified to try using this new gas station. So we had to have a little life moment over it. And so just kind of some weird stuff like that. So all I'm saying is that, you guys are going to get calls. People are going to say, please never have her on the air again.
No, they won't.
No. We got to learn from you.
So I'm just saying that sometimes we realize that there are just quirky things, maybe patterns that we've fallen into. And I would say, having a partner is great. Playing to your strengths is great. But remember, even though Ecclesiastes 4 talks about a cord of 3 strands, you're still a separate strand in that cord, y'all. Spouses will think that maybe on that last day they're going to be able to point to their spouse and blame them for a lot of stuff, maybe their own mistakes or whatever. And I'm like, no, I think you're going to have to be responsible for your own heavy lifting when it comes to that before the Lord. And so, singles have learned a lot of things by necessity, and we tend to do it to a fault. It's almost like our opposite application is we have to learn dependence.
The world around us is full of false choices. That temptation to be us versus them, for or against, in or out. But what does it really look like for followers of Jesus to engage in the messiness of life, the gray issues of faith, to truly allow our lives to conform to the gospel? Join us as we try to figure it out. We are the Brian and Janelle Podcast.
I can't tell you how many of my married friends have gotten married, and then they make all these assumptions about their spouse of this person is going to want to spend every waking moment with them. Or the woman that says, I absolutely love knitting, and I really hope my husband is into that because that's, something that we want to share together. Well, you know what? Chances are probably that's a hard pass on his side.
Hey there, Brian and Janelle Podcast listeners. Brian here with a quick item for you before we get to the main content in today's episode. I'm super excited to tell you about a podcast series I created in partnership with Moody Radio that's available now. It's called The Grandfather Effect. And here's the quick backstory. I only have really one strong memory of my paternal grandfather, Tom. And it was when my dad and I were standing shoulder to shoulder in a crowded room right in front of his open casket. And I remember standing there a bit mystified, because you see, Grandpa Tom had lived only about 15 miles away from my house growing up, and yet I never saw him. He never talked to me, called me, never came to birthday parties. He was no part of our life. He had disowned my family when I was about 3 years old, and my family was left with lots of questions. Because from our perspective, the reason he disowned us didn't seem to make much sense. The circumstances were so seemingly trivial. It just didn't add up. So what happened? Well, about 5 years ago, I decided to try to find out. And that journey became much more complicated than I could have possibly imagined. And I chronicled the entire thing with a recorder in my hand and take you along in the journey. The podcast series is called The Grandfather Effect. Would you consider giving it a listen? I'd be super grateful for your support. And if you like what you hear, maybe you'd be willing to leave a nice review or even tell a friend about it. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Thanks a lot.
Joining us now, I recall her laughing uproariously at my jokes in the studio.
Oh, yeah.
She loves her time with us. It's her very favorite. Lisa Anderson not only hosts the Boundless Show, heard right here every Saturday at 9 a.m., but also works for and with young adults at Focus on the Family.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Lisa.
Great to be here.
Do you agree with my assessment about your laughing at my jokes uproariously?
I felt it was a little overstated, but I'm going to let it pass.
Yeah, you were like, I just want to let that go. Wow. We've known each other that long that you're like, okay, Brian. Anyway.
Yeah, I definitely got a chuckle out of what you were saying. Not that I remember exactly what it was, but it was fantastic.
A chuckle.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I don't mind those. I'll take anything I can get when I got teenagers at home.
I like that you're coming with lessons that married people can learn from singles. But before we get
Oh, I
started,
thought that was a joke.
no, that's what he was thinking,
No.
Lisa.
That's it. I have so much to say on this topic, you guys.
Well, good,
For real.
because first I wanted to ask you, so when y'all single people get together, do you talk about us? Are you like, man, they really got to learn this?
Well, not necessarily, although it is funny. I do remember a time with my one of my team members at work where we were talking about something, and she kind of called over from across the hall like, I don't know why in the world married people can't figure this out or something. And it kind of was, we both got, a laugh out of that when we started coming up with things that like, oh yeah, and what about this? And what about this? What
Yeah.
about this? So, then we had to be a little bit humble because there are plenty of things that singles learn from married people. And hello, I talk about them on my show all the time. So I thought it would be kind of fun to turn the tables a little bit.
Like, what are these lessons, air quotes, that you have for us today?
Okay. Well, so the first one, a lot of these are just kind of fun, or it can be addressed in a fun way. But like the first one is, and this kind of is born out of the conversation I had with my coworker, like married people can learn how to maintain your independence in a good way. Okay, because I have people, like let's say maybe my sister, who, for lack of a better illustration, who I just went on a 3-day trip with her, and in order to go on a 3-day trip, she actually had to make meals for my brother-in-law and put them in the fridge and the freezer and like give him instructions on what to make. What's up with this guy not being able to just maybe get some food? So
That's
I was
terrible.
like, okay, it was weird. Okay, so and again, we're not talking about like a month-long sabbatical. It was just kind of a weird thing. Similarly to that, I have heard from people. So here's like coworkers, or here's people that I've heard through Focus on the Family. A woman who said, I can't even work the remote in my house because my husband always does it. So like when she wants to watch a show, her husband finds her show for her with her remote. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do when your husband's not there and you want to watch a show? So we had a little
What does she do?
conversation about that. I don't think she watches shows.
Yeah.
Lisa, that's so bad.
Well, no, but I'm saying this is you guys telling on yourselves, y'all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm not
for
making
real. I'm not even going
I'm
to
not
hate.
making this stuff up.
At first, I was
have
like,
another.
I could do
No, go ahead.
I could do controls, please. That's not me. But then I thought, and I was like, oh wait, I don't like pumping gas. My husband does that, so that's not very independent.
Are you going to tell her what you
Okay.
did
What?
the one time?
Are you serious? So I was driving to work, and like I was on E, and my husband pumps gas. But then I was like, okay, he's at work, and I gotta drive back home. Like, what am I gonna do? So I got to work, and I told Brian,
In a panic.
I don't know what to do. I'm almost on E, and I gotta get home.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, you could get gas.
This is exactly one of my examples. This is another sister of mine. I was in the car with her, and we're up in Denver, and she's like, oh, I need to get gas. And then we pull into the station, and she's like, hey, would you be willing to pump it? And I'm like,
What?
well, yeah, I can, but what's up with that? And she said, well, I only know how to use the gas station near my house.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Did you bust out laughing?
Well, I did, but then I realized she was serious, that she was very terrified to like try using this new gas station. So we had to have a little life moment over it. And so just kind of some weird stuff like that. So
Okay.
all I'm saying is that, you guys are going to get calls. People are going to say, please never have her on the air again.
No, they won't. We love
no,
you.
no. We
That's
got to
okay.
learn from you. Mhm.
So I'm just saying that sometimes we realize that there are just quirky things, maybe patterns that we've fallen into. And
Yeah.
I would say, having a partner is great, playing to your strengths is great. But remember, even though Ecclesiastes 4 talks about a cord of 3 strands, you're still a separate strand in that cord, y'all. Be a contributor. And I think a lot of marriages tend to struggle because one or both partners kind of lose themselves in the marriage.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
it's like just an opportunity to say, hey, I am still my own person. I'm still someone who, I'm responsible to God for myself, not for my spouse. I think a lot of, spouses will think that maybe on that last day, they're going to be able to point to their spouse and blame them for a lot of stuff, maybe their own mistakes or whatever. And I'm like, no, I think, you're going to have to be responsible for your own heavy lifting when it comes to that before the Lord. And so, singles have learned a lot of things by necessity, and we tend to do it to a fault. So it's almost like our opposite application is we have to learn dependence. I remember a friend of mine, she was on the internet Googling how to fix a carburetor. And I'm like, you don't know anything about carburetors. Why don't you just ask one of our guy friends to give you some advice, and then they can win in that space and you don't have to obsess about it. She was like, oh yeah, I guess so.
Time for a quick break, but more of these lessons that seem real, that Lisa Anderson has discovered that married people could learn from singles. More on that in a minute.
You made it to the middle of this episode. Wow, you did it. So if you made it this far, that probably means you're at least tolerating, if not, dare I say, enjoying what you're hearing. And if that's the case, I'd love to ask you for a favor. We'd love your help spreading the word about the Brian and Janelle podcast. There's such a crowded space in the podcast world, so many different things to listen to and choose from. Would you consider sharing this podcast, or maybe even this episode, with two of your closest friends? Please send them this and tell them why you like our podcast. Helping us spread the word would just be a huge way to support what we're doing. Thanks a lot. Back to the show.
Brian and Janelle Mornings with our friend Lisa Anderson, director of Boundless, and also serves young adults at Focus on the Family. And today she's coming with lessons that married people can learn from singles. We talked about the first one, which is maintain your independence in a good way. What's the second one, Lisa?
Yeah, I would say another thing that where, marrieds could probably learn from singles is straight up how to make friends. And here's the deal.
Oh, Brian needs this
people.
One. Hold up. Get your pencil.
Okay.
Get your pencil.
Yeah, no, it's true, though. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Because here's the deal. Singles have the potential to be friendship pros, because if we aren't intentional about building friendships, we will have no one. Okay, so This is something that we've gone after. And I can't tell you how many of my married friends have gotten married, and then they make all these assumptions about their spouse of this person is going to be their everything. This person is going to want to spend every waking moment with them. Or the woman that says, I absolutely love knitting, and I really hope my husband is into that because that's, something that we want to share together. Well, you know what? Chances are probably that's a hard pass on his side. And so it's you got to get friends. You got to be able to build relationships outside of your marriage that can complement the relationship within your marriage, that can give you additional, sounding boards, that can give you accountability, that can just allow you to kind of grow in areas where maybe, you can't just glom onto your spouse and have them be your everything. We know that's not even biblical. And so, we're a single person. We need these people in our lives. We need to have that mirror. We also need our friends. They're our ride to the airport. They're our chicken soup when we're sick. They're our sounding boards. I remember, you guys, and this is so sad, I remember someone writing into me at Boundless once and saying, Lisa, I just can't wait to get married because then someone will be obligated to love me. To make that assumptive statement of this person, I'm going to look to this person to be everything for me. And it's just not true. And so, I always say, men, have your hobbies, your guy friends, your men's groups, and ladies, let them go.
Amen.
I mean, again, we have to be able to allow one another to grow in the ways that God wants us to grow.
I'm part of a dad's Facebook group on Facebook. Hello, no surprise. And one of the almost daily posts
Facebook
from
friends do not even count, Brian. Okay,
yeah, right.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, clearly, yes. No, but I mean, once a day, there's a guy who posts on there to this group of men my wife's unhappy. I don't have any friends. What do I do? And that's the reality for a lot of married people. So you're absolutely right on that one. Look at you, Lisa.
And I like that you didn't just say both men and women get friends, but you're calling out women to let the guys go, because we do kind of play this guilt trip about, you going to leave me alone? You care more about your friends? So thank you, Lisa. You go ahead.
Well, it is because you women cannot work your remotes. And that's why you need your husbands at home. And you're not letting them go out with their friends. Okay, so
That's what it is.
Okay, so that's a quick one. Let me go to one other one that I think you guys can learn from us, and that is how to date, okay? So here's the deal.
Oh, no, that's true.
Singles have got our dating game on because it is make it or break it.
Mm-hmm.
We are out to impress. We're out to win. We're out to woo. We're being creative. I mean, I know singles who are like doing personality tests with the people they're dating. They are coming up with super creative dates. They're making time for this person they're interested in. It's all about woo. And it's like, once you guys get married, it's just like, let's go out and just grab some Chick-fil-A and maybe
gave
talk
up.
about our kids' school program coming up next week. And it's like, don't use time together to administrate your marriage. Learn how to recapture fun, how to get to know your spouse, how to, enjoy your spouse, how to just get to know them kind of like when you were dating and you were having fun and being creative. And so, maybe a few tips from your single friends who are out there, pounding the pavement, trying to find that person might be good to put into your wheelhouse.
Yeah, we need single friends to just give us the ideas. It's exhausting to try to think of one.
You should text Lisa.
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
Sarah and I are going to be married 20 years this next year. That's a lot of dates.
Yeah.
Give me the ideas, Lisa.
Yeah.
Okay, so good.
Well,
Thank you.
We got them. Yep.
Okay, and you've got, was that 4?
And no, there are a couple others. I mean,
there's
let me
more.
say,
Good.
okay.
Yeah, we need more,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, so that was one, how to do that. And then also, I would say, here's another thing to think through, and that is how to find family in the church. So a lot of times, you load up kind of your family, you go home after church, whatever. And I know, I've seen a lot of memes out there that say something to the effect of family is everything or whatever. And I'm like, well, you know what? No, it's not. There's not going to be marriage in heaven. Only our spiritual family is going to last. And so what does it look like to maybe enfold a widow or two at church, or an orphan, or a foster family, or maybe a single adult? Singles, this is where we have to go after this as well. And I always say, one of the most encouraging passages in Scripture for singles is out of Matthew 12, when, Jesus says he was still speaking to the people, and his mother and brothers stood outside asking to speak to him. And then he says to the man who tells him, who is my mother and who are my brothers? Mm-hmm. And he says, here are my brother and my mother and my brothers, stretching his hand out toward the disciples. And I'm like, too often it kind of comes into that whole, like, my family is my everything, and looking outside ourselves and making that something where we're inclusive of other people, recognizing that we're part of the family of God, first and foremost, I think is a great practice for everyone. And then finally, my final advice is something to learn from singles is how to look to Jesus to complete you. And so, I've been told as a single, well, remember, you have Jesus. He's all you need. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, yeah, he is. But you know what? He's all that you need, too. In fact, he's the only sure thing that any of us have. And so oftentimes we think, I know a lot of my married friends look forward with very great fear about, what if something happens to my spouse? What will I do? I won't be able to survive. And the fact is, we will. God calls some of us to be single, but none of us are called to be alone. And so I always remind my married friends, your marriage isn't the biggest thing about you, just like my singleness isn't the biggest thing about me. Yeah. And so, it's okay for us singles to grieve singleness. There's so many great things about marriage, but first and foremost, if you're a disciple of Jesus, you are a child of the King, and we have to rest in that identity, and marriage is a gift in that construct. And so recognizing that our identity comes from Christ alone, not from our spouse, not from our kids, not from our station in life. And so that's something that I think singles have to run after every day and remind ourselves of that in the losses of life. And so maybe our married friends could learn that too.
And look at this, Lisa Anderson was right again.
She's amazing. You should have a marriage conference.
I mean, okay, how many people would come to that?
I would go.
I'd go.
I'll recruit people for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, we'll try it. It'll be fun. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Don't forget, if you like what you hear on a weekly basis, we'd be grateful for your ratings and reviews wherever you listen. And also subscribe so you get the latest episodes. Follow us wherever you are on social media and search for us online. We're at brianandjanelle.org. Don't miss our weekday morning show with conversations just like this. You can listen on the Moody Radio mobile app or again at our website, brianandjanelle.org. Special thanks to the talented team of individuals who tirelessly put together this podcast every week: Josue Villa, Mike Reynolds, and Ron Eastwood. The Brian and Janelle podcast is a production of WCRF Moody Radio Cleveland. Until next time, we're Brian and Janelle.